All right, I'm going to show you guys how to do the test bed build. First thing you're going to need is this metal piece right here. All right, we're going to attach the long threaded beam to it using the red screw. So you're going to attach this in this the longer slots is where you want to put the beam. Just somewhere in this slot is fine. It doesn't have to be on the very end. In fact, if you put it on the very end, it won't fit. So somewhere right around here. All right, so I'm just going to put the red screw in there and then thread that on there. All right, now I'm going to do the same on this end down here. So I'm just picking a spot there and then putting the threaded beam on the screw. Okay, now we're going to put it onto the build plate. So I didn't tighten these up very tight, so that way I could choose where I wanted them on my build plate. So I'm going to have to slide this one over just a little bit to get it to line up with the hole just right. Okay, so I'm going to put red screws underneath. Like that. Remember to use your hex driver to get those screws good and tight. Now that these are in position, I'm going to go over them and make sure they're tight with the hex driver. And so there's where we're at right now. Okay, everything's put together with red screws so far. So the next thing I'm going to do is put the bushing on. Now this is going to be a little bit different than how you're used to doing bushing. I'm only going to put a green screw through one hole because the screw that holds the motor on is going to go through the other hole. So I'm going to use a green screw, and it doesn't really matter which hole you pick as long as it's one of the outside ones. And then just pick a spot kind of near the end, doesn't really matter where. And then put a hex nut on the back side of it. I'm going to do the same thing on this end. Green screw in the bushing, somewhere near the end. All right, so there's where we're at. Got my bushings on there. Okay, now you're going to put the motor on the bushing. Now this is kind of tricky. You want okay, see how there's a hole right here for the axle? Turn it this way just a little bit. That hole is where the axle goes. That's the part that turns. It's going to make the axle turn, which is going to make the wheel turn. These two posts right here are just support posts that attach the motor to the whatever it is. The robot, or in this case, the test bed. Okay, so screws are going to go in these two holes here, and the axle is going to go in this hole. Now you want the axle hole to line up with the middle hole of the bushing. And then this support hole is going to go in the end hole of the bushing. And this support hole is actually not going to go in the bushing at all. It'll be over here. So we're going to need a long screw for this and a short screw for this. We need a longer screw to go through the bushing and then a short screw to go where there is no bushing. The short one won't fit here and the long one will be too long and won't fit here. So you got to use one long here, one short here. Okay, so these are the motor screws, the ones with the yellow tops. Or they might be all silver. That's what you're going to use here. So I'm going to take the longer one. See how that one's longer? That one's shorter. I want the longer one in here on the end. And it's going to go in this support hole. Use the long skinny hex driver to tighten that. All right, now I'm going to use the short motor screw to go, see how that's offset just a little bit? So the middle hole here lines up with the axle hole. And this hole doesn't go through the bushing at all. And that's where the short motor screw is going to go, right there. So this one's really difficult to do with your hand. So you have to use the hex driver to help you out. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing over here. So here's my motor. All right? So the long motor screw is going to go here, short one here. Long motor screw is going to go through here. Short motor screw is going to go right there. Okay, next step, I'm going to put the cortex, that's like the computer that tells everything what to do, onto my build plate, just somewhere near the middle. And you'll want to use green screws for this one. And just put a hex nut on the bottom of each screw. Okay, screw in each corner, hex nut on the bottom. Now you want it to be tight so that it doesn't fall off, but you don't want it to be too tight because you could crack the plastic on the cortex. So tighten it up a little bit, but don't be really forceful with it. Okay, next we're going to take, this is called the bump switch. All right, we're just going to attach it almost anywhere. And you can use green or blue screws. right, so you can see it's kind of near the cortex, not right next to it. And again, I'm going to tighten them with my hex driver. All right, this one is called the bump switch. Okay, we're going to put that on here too. I'm going to put that one over here. Again, green screws. All right, finally we've got the light sensor. And again, that can go pretty much anywhere. Okay, so there we have it. All right, so now we're going to wire this. One of your motors, and it really doesn't matter which one, but one of them, you're going to plug into, see where it says motor? It's backwards, but anyways, that's where it says motor. And you want to plug it into one of them into 1 and one of them into 10. So the motor plug into number 1, the other motor plug into number 10. Okay, next you're going to put the bump switch into digital 1. The limit switch goes into digital 2. All right, the light sensor goes up here into analog number 1. It says analog over here on the side, analog number 1. All right. Then you're going to have an extension cord, which has just got 2 blank ends, and you'll need an LED light. Okay, the LED light is going to go into this end of the extension cord. Now here's very, very important. The part with the gold on it goes on the same side as the part with the gold on it. See how the back side doesn't have gold, the back side of that, no gold. So it's going to go like this. No gold, no gold. Gold, gold. If you do it backwards, it'll be hot wired and this light gets really, really hot and can cause problems. Now this is going to plug into, I know it's really hard to see in there. You want to plug it into digital 3. So if you can kind of see, okay, bump switch is 1, limit switch 2, it's black, so it's really hard to see with how dark it is, but that's in number 3 right there. Okay, and then you can just put your bulb. I usually just put it through the hole right here so that it doesn't get tangled up in the wheels and get lost. This one's kind of long, so I'm going to wrap it around a few times. There. All right, now we're going to put the wheel on. You'll need an axle. All right, you're going to put the axle through the wheel and put a collar on the end here to hold the wheel on. And that gets tightened with the skinny hex driver. Same thing on this wheel. Axle, collar, all right. Okay, this part's a little bit tricky also. When you put the axle through the hole here, it's going to go into the motor. But you need a collar. You need to put a collar between the motor and the metal piece. Otherwise, your axle will slide out, and that gets really annoying. All right, so I'm going to put this collar right there. Oh, I'm going to have to loosen the screw on it. Okay, try this again. So the axle goes through there, and then the collar goes on the axle like that. And then the axle goes into the motor. All right, then I need to tighten this collar. Okay, now you can see the wheel will not fall out of the axle, or the motor, I mean. All right, same thing over here. Gonna put the axle through the hole, take the collar, just like that. Push it till it gets into the motor. Boy. Okay, so now you can see if your collar is right against the metal here, the wheel can't come out. But it can still move like this. So what I need to do, I'm going to move this collar in. But notice that there is a little bit of a gap right there. Point to it right here. See this gap? Okay, you don't want the wheel right against that really tight, or it'll get caught on the bushing. So leave just a little bit of a gap. Same thing. Just a little bit of a gap. All right. There's your test bed.